April 16th, and we are all here except Council Member Stipp, and he will not be attending this evening. So we'll go to the agenda. There are budget conversations, and as it was the last budget meeting, this is geared for conversation. Are we listening over there? Geared for conversations? Thank you. Before we start, though, excuse me, I don't want to say, let me give you this first. Council, you'll provide an overview of the city manager's FY19 budget recommendations, including a 5-year general fund forecast, proposed supplement additions, and new and changed capital projects before Lori Riggenroth comes forward. You have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, I want to start off by thank you for all the time we spent last week going through the city manager's fiscal year 19 budget. It was a great discussion, and we made it all the way through that presentation. So tonight, what I'd like to do is recap where we left off, how we've addressed some of the issues that were raised during the conversation, and then finish the presentation with an overview of the recommended budget. But essentially, some of the issues that were raised last week, I'm very pleased to say that we've been able to make and incorporate some of those suggested changes. So we will be adding to the police department supplement a request for 2 police officers dedicated to their narcotics assignment. If you recall, the conversation amongst council was to add 1 narcotics officer. However, in conversations with Chief Geyer, to really have an impact in this area, the recommendation from us back to council is going to be to consider 2 positions. Also included in tonight's conversation is the addition of the Humane Society contract for animal cruelty. And this is something that will supplement our current contract with MCSO, which is just handling the licensing and the stray dogs, or the stray animals. This actually extends that contract to the Humane Society, who will be handling all of the animal cruelty and hoarding situation calls all the way through the investigative process. And then the final modification that we've made to the budget that you'll see this evening is to increase the council's discretionary funds from the current $750 per member to $2,500 per council member, with $3,000 for the mayor. And basically, with the size of our city and the role of the role that you have in the community, we do believe it's essential you have those funds to support you. In addition, we had that conversation about the overall general fund that the city council has access to. And we had talked about using that to fund the youth to attend at least the in-state conference this next year. And so we will be utilizing that fund to accomplish that. And we're also going to recommend that in policy, that fund always have a balance of $100,000. And so say that this year, $25,000 is spent out of that account. Next year, using one-time dollars, we would bring that balance up to $100,000. All of these items that we discussed and that we've been able to add back into the budget total about $500,000. And Lori's going to walk you through the modifications that allows us to accomplish those council goals that you expressed last week. So with that, I look forward to tonight's conversation.
Thank you for the update. And for the public, before us is Lauren Riggenroth, our finance manager for budget and research, begins after our city manager. Thank you. Go ahead.
All righty. Thank you. So last week we kind of started big and worked our way down. We're going to go the opposite direction today. We're going to start with kind of a little bit more information about the items Julie just reviewed with you. And then we'll do kind of an overview of what that means the general fund now looks like, and then also what the citywide budget looks like. I will also include either some information on items that the council raised at the last meeting. We'll have some information on the set-aside calculation, how the new ongoing revenues have been used, some more details on property tax, information on debt, outstanding principal balances, and then just summarize with the information on the positions. So with that, we'll get going. And so, again, with the revisions that Julie just reviewed with you, last week we showed you a budget of $126.5 million for the general fund. The new budget we're presenting is $126.8 million, so it's gone up about $300,000, and we're adding 2 positions. Oops, went one too far there. This outlines how we accomplished the additions that Julie reviewed with you. So starting with, we ended last meeting with zero balance in the general fund. We have now recognized, we mentioned before, we hadn't recognized the revenue anticipated from the school district for this school resource officer that's being added. They are funding 1/2 of the position cost for the school year. So we estimate that would be $47,500 in revenue. We also, at the last meeting, we had recently heard about the insurance rebate, and that was not yet incorporated into our numbers. So we've added the revenue associated with that anticipated receipt that will come early next fiscal year. And then historically, we have treated the city manager's contingency as an ongoing cost. The practice has primarily only been to fund one-time items through that contingency. Since I've been here, I don't think we've added any ongoing items. But at last week's council meeting, we did hear mention of, is there a way to add positions in the middle of the year? And by having that city manager's contingency in an ongoing category, we do have the flexibility to do mid-year adds that would be ongoing in nature. Excuse me. What we're recommending is that we now fund or classify the city manager's contingency as 50-50, half of it in the ongoing side and half of it on the one-time side, to allow us to continue to have the flexibility to deal with a mid-year ongoing need, but to recognize that generally those are one-time items, such as storm damage and those types of things. So in essence, that created additional ongoing resources, and it reduced one-time resources because the one-time is now absorbing that $250,000 and the ongoing is freeing it up. So it's not actually a new resource, it's just a reallocation on the sides of the ongoing and one-time side of our way we prepare the budget.
For the staff your night, any questions on that? I saw you looking, Joe, so
No, I just want to make sure, historically, every year we've had $500,000 of our ongoing that we've put into that fund.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make clarification. So if that's the case, I have no problem with splitting it up because it's not like we're shifting one-time money and trying now to reclassify it. It's been ongoing all along. We're just now saying we're going to use half of it for ongoing, half of it for one-time.
That's correct.
Okay,
It's been treated as ongoing.
I'm fine, thanks.
it's making us more flexible,
Yes.
essentially. Yeah, Brandon?
So yeah, I like the flexibility, but if we were to get into, so if we put it in a different bucket, can we still use it for something? If the emergency came up where we needed to use all the money for whatever reason, can we still use both pots, or it would be restricted to only the one pot?
Councilmember, Mayor, we have the policy, the financial policy that's adopted says we cannot use, that we must use ongoing resources to pay for one-time or for ongoing costs. There's nothing that prohibits us from using ongoing resources to pay for one-time things. Okay. So if a one-time $500,000 item came up, we could use that entire contingency for that one-time purpose. If we wanted to go the other way of using the whole $500,000 for ongoing, that would be a change from our existing policy.
Okay, no, that clarifies it. Thank you.
Joe?
Except in this case, you only have 250.
Correct.
You've already allocated 250, so you only have 250 left, just for clarification.
Right. So you could fund $250,000 worth of ongoing and stay within council policy. All right. So then in terms of the expense side, so we mentioned we're adding the 2 police officers for the narcotics assignment. I'm showing there the ongoing and one-time costs. If you do look back at your materials for last week, you will see that the ongoing costs were stated as slightly higher. What we've done is we've asked the police department to absorb the overtime that they were going to add as part of that request. That's something that then can be reviewed again in a future year. That they would likely have salary savings, as they probably won't hire these people on the first day of the fiscal year. And they do have over an $800,000 overtime budget, so the police chief concurs that that's a feasible solution.
Brandon?
We might have already covered this before, but those two positions, they can be used in other capacities, right? Not just narcotics.
The police chief would deploy these to narcotics purposes, but I think he always has the ability to deploy all of his resources to other areas as needed. I don't know, Jerry, if that...
Yeah, that's what I figure.
And I was just curious what
I hope that our narcotics isn't
a
going to be
police
needed that
officer
often.
you have now move to that, and the next one be a regular, just coming in employed?
What we would do is, as I spoke last week, we have our neighborhood enforcement team. These would be 2 additional positions to that unit,
Okay.
making it a 5-person unit. It would have these 2 positions plus the other temporary positions that we talked about. So it would supplement that unit. And they would be a true undercover part of that unit. But obviously, all the officers of that unit, if needed, have the ability to do undercover or uniform type work.
We did talk about this. Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? All right, thanks, Chief.
All righty. And then, as Julie mentioned, we're adding the animal cruelty contract with the Humane Society. The increases to the discretionary funds for the council members and the mayor add $12,500 to that budget. And then when we added that $47,500 in ongoing revenue, because our policy says we will set the contingency at 15% of ongoing revenue, we needed to increase the contingency by $7,200. And then in order to balance this, we reduced the capital project reserve project down to $7.5 million to make up for the difference. So in essence, that project is helping fund the one-time costs associated with the narcotics position, plus a little bit of that changing the contingency practice. And then this also adds 2 additional positions. Mayor, I think one of the council members has a question.
Joe, thank you.
Just a statement. I appreciate that slide before, at least for somebody like me. I can read it and see it and get it right away, and I could see the flow. So I appreciate how you set that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. And so just want to show you the changes to the individual department budgets that are impacted by this. So as we mentioned, the mayor and council office goes up by $12,500 as a result of the changes to the discretionary funds. And as Julie mentioned previously, we're recommending that we establish the special projects fund to not drop below $100,000 when we start a new budget year. What we will do is carry over, we won't reduce it. It currently has $137,000 remaining. So we will carry over that amount so that can be spent. But then if next year when we start the budget process, if that fund has been used such that it's dropped to say $75,000, when we brought forward the budget recommendations, we'd recommend raising it back up to the $100,000.
Molly?
So this special fund, it is separate to the council discretionary fund?
Yes, Mayor, Council, this is that special projects fund that you use, for example, this year to fund the White Tanks Conservancy.
That's what I'm talking
Yep.
about.
Yep.
I thought we had $165,000 in the fund left.
You started at $162,000 this year, and you allocated $35,000 to the White Tanks Conservancy, which leaves you at $137,000 to carry over into next year. So we're recommending we carry over that full amount, so that full amount will be available next year.
Okay.
And that in the future years, we would continue to make sure it's budgeted at least $100,000 as you work your way down.
Was there any consideration to putting us back to the 250 where we started?
This was what we felt we could manage within the resources that were available.
Okay, I guess we can discuss that next year for the next budget to bring it back up to where it was.
Yes, that's certainly an option and certainly something that we'll throw into the list
Okay.
so that we are ready for it next year.
Okay, because I would like to see it more than 100,000 personally, because the one project, while we gave the white tanks 25,000, we did spend 25 or 35,000 for the speed bumps in North Subdivision, and that's where some of our money went. So I can imagine, not that we're going to do speed bumps in every neighborhood, but the cost has gone up so one or two projects could wipe it out completely. And I would hate to see that happen.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks.
Joanne?
I can understand that, Wally. I think, though, that historically, we've yet to ever go over 50,000, I believe, in 1 year's time. I mean, the speed humps, that was like 3 or 4 years ago, I believe. And then it was, and then, so every single year, we've only used
25 or so.
Yeah, so I would say that certainly the 100,000 right now makes sense. We've just not hit a point. I understand your concern, but historically we still have yet to even touch it that way. So next year look at it again. Obviously you'll see if a need arose that, oh darn, it wasn't there for us. But right now we just haven't needed it.
Is this the money we're going to use for the youth commission to do
Correct.
things with?
Yes.
If we want to take them somewhere, or NLC, or to the league, or whatever we're going to do?
Right, that you could use, this would be the intended source to use for that.
Which is a good source, absolutely. But
And then just as a reminder, not that, we will definitely bring back in the next budget process the history on uses, comparisons with other jurisdictions. And then, but as a reminder, in the coming year, you still could ask to use the city manager's contingency as well if something greater than the 137 arose.
I keep forgetting that.
there's enough pools of money around.
I keep forgetting that. I'm sorry.
Joe, did you have something more?
I was just going to say, there are other options.
There are
If-
other,
yeah, so.
I agree, there are other options.
All righty.
Ted?
All right, so with the police department is the other place where there's changes. So their budget's now increased to $25.6 million, and we've added 2 additional positions. The changes that are related to police department supplementals is, again, a reminder that we added that revenue associated with the school resource officer that we'll be receiving from a school district. Added the 2 officers for the narcotics and the animal cruelty contract. So that's another walkthrough of the changes. Any other questions on the changes?
Questions?
Okay.
They're satisfied.
All right, so here's your $126.8 million general fund.
I have questions, but I think I'm going to wait till you've gone through the rest of it. Thank you.
Perfect. So just slight changes from the last time, just to pick up those 2 revenues that we've talked about. The general fund, the use of the resources, this again is very close to what you saw last time. Changes to the ongoing O&M and the one-time as a result of the supplementals. This is to respond to a question that we often get, which is this compares the FY19 ongoing resources to what was budgeted in FY18 for ongoing resources, and keeping in mind that, and so that we're showing we have about $7.5 million more in ongoing revenues in next year's budget compared to this year, keeping in mind that within that number is the $4.5 million in construction sales tax. And then also that includes the $1.8 million associated with the supplemental for the EMR share, or the EMR contribution to the cost of the staffing of the fire station. So that number would have been much lower if those changes were not included. And also the transfers to asset management are lower in 19, so that makes a little additional resources available compared to the 18 budget. And there was a difference in the net difference in the set aside also needs to go into this calculation to help explain the resources side. Those resources then were used up by $4.2 million in labor increases, $3.1 million in supplementals, the $700,000 in base budget increases that we talked to you about in March. And then there's a change in the amount that's being transferred to HERF and ballpark for primarily related to higher supplementals in those areas.
Joe? Excuse me.
The one question that I had, I guess at the last meeting, was those 3 public works individuals that primarily are working for the ballpark, but they were in the general fund, I guess, in parks. Do you still have them in there?
Yes, they're still in there. Councilmember, we were waiting until we implement the new financial system to change the way we're going to charge out the facilities, all of facilities to the various departments. So right now, they're sitting in the general fund. Rather, it would just change the supplemental number down, and it would increase that transfer number. So at this point in time, we didn't make that adjustment.
The only reason I mention it is I'm hoping over time, because that was the same issue we had with fire and police, remember, where we really wanted to get the true costs, even though it's all going to end up in the general fund. I understand that. But I think the whole idea was to make sure we captured the true cost of the ballpark, whatever it is. So I'm hoping once you get the system that 300,000 plus whatever it is ends up over in the ballpark, even though the general fund's covering it. I understand that. But I would really like a true cost of what it costs to operate that ballpark.
We will ensure that that happens, that their budget does reflect their costs.
Brandon?
You might go over this later on, but I think last I asked a question about what the true number of the debt is for the ballpark.
I have a slide later on debt service, so I'll get to that at that point in time.
Yep.
All righty. Just through this slide in there again to remind you that we have incorporated the recommendation to shift $4.5 million of construction sales tax to the ongoing side of the ledger. So just sharing a slide that we saw when we looked at this in March. There was a question to see the detail associated with the O&M cost set aside. So this is shows you the kind of the running balance, the beginning balance, the annual allocation that's required. You'll notice under the current plan, we could reduce that allocation starting in FY20. And then it shows that we're accounting for the recreation center, the police ops phase 2, the aquatic center and the community park, the ambulance cost as that ambulance program is rolled in. The loss of the EMR revenue is depicted there as actually what the inflated cost of the staff are, as opposed to what the EMR revenue is expected to be at that point in time. And then anticipation of opening the West Goodyear station. And then as we've talked about a little bit, that there's also O&M being received from SEDEA, which is running in about the $500,000 range now, but we anticipate it's going to grow to close to $600,000. And that agreement called for $6 million to be paid in O&M costs, and that is collected as an amount per building permit. That amount was determined based on the number of expected permits, and so we just collect that as they pull permits, and we anticipate reaching that $6 million number near the end of FY23.
Joanne?
Okay. Question on this area. So the set-aside money that we've been doing so well at for these years, getting ready for this year to take on that payment, full payment of the ballpark, that has been general fund money, correct? And that has been ongoing dollars.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. So once the STA comes in 2021, and I believe you said you were going to have an update sometime next week. Next week. Darn it. Okay, but next week. All right, so we'll hold our breath till next week. So my question is, going down this line of thinking, if all goes well in 2021, they do come in to start paying like they're supposed to, that frees up $3 million? What is or is it still, it frees up this? Or have you already?
That set aside is already exhausted.
Okay.
So that was the PIC debt set aside. And because in FY19, we peak at the highest debt service payment for the ballpark. So in moving from FY18 to FY19, our debt service increased $2.1 million, and we came into this year with a $2.2 million set aside for PIC debt. So that's why you don't see that set aside anymore, because we used it up, it met its goal, and we have funded that in the FY19 budget. So this set aside is just about the O&M costs that we anticipate coming on from future capital projects or other programs that the council is committed to, such as the planning for an ambulance program.
So we still have the okay, and this is the part I was getting confused upon, because I was thinking that we still have been,
So the council, when
But we've already
we
used it, is what you're
receive
telling
when
me.
we receive those resources from the Tourism and Sports Authority, the council will have the ability to decide what to do with those resources.
Okay,
so we
so-
have
so
not
we do.
planned. We will when those resources start coming in.
Right.
That will be a new resource to help us pay our debt service, which will free up general funds.
Okay.
So when we get to that point and we're more certain, yes, we will start receiving those funds, and the dollar amounts we might start receiving them in. A future forecast will show those resources coming in, and the council will have the ability to allocate those. It'll be
Right. Okay, so
additional
that's where I
resources.
thought it was. Okay, that's what I all along thought was going to happen. Okay, good. And this was what I wanted to say to the council. I understand this year. I know that you guys, I
Are you
beat.
about ready to spend some of that money? We don't have
No,
yet?
I'm about to, I'm
Okay,
wanting to
just-
give our citizens some of their money back. And so, when we've been doing all of this, because we've had this responsibility to have to take care of that debt, and we've done it. And so if the STA does, and that's why I'm saying I'm not, we can't do it this year. I know that. But if we are watching and we see that money is finally coming back into play, then the citizens should be getting some of their money back, because you know what? We're not a business and we're not a for-profit type of situation. And so I'm thinking, okay, we've done what we're supposed to do, and we have. And there's always going to be need, there's always going to be desire, but it's a balance. And so, I will beat that drum forever about the grocery food tax. That's just, to me, that's just how I feel, and we have to get rid of it. Sure, I would say it. I want it again this year, but I know it's not going to happen. And we're doing the responsible things. But come that year, that's what I'm looking at. And I won't be here to say it, but I'm just, I'm thinking that is the appropriate time to say, guys, because I've gone over the changes that we have grown in revenue from retail. I mean, and not just retail, all of our revenue sources, and I see that. But we've been responsible with what we do. So I'm looking at the future, and I'm hoping that whoever's on the council at that time will realize that this is finally at the point that we can start finding a way to sunset the food tax.
Sherry,
I know you so, and I know that is a passion of yours, but I think when we did the math one time, it was like $1.50 a month is what it came down to.
It doesn't matter. It's principle.
Let me finish. It
I'm
is
finished.
principle, and the principle is I don't want this city to ever be where our state is right now with education. We're going to lower taxes, lower taxes, lower taxes. We can't pay. We had a request from our police department for more than those 2 officers, and I appreciate the city manager struggling to try to get those police officers. We still have more set-asides up there that we're setting aside money for future things that this city needs. It would be great that we wouldn't have to do that, because that's money we can't use now. That's money we have to use later. Financially, my $1.25, your $1.25, your $1.25 is going to pay for that ambulance service, or that paramedicine service, or the 4th fire station that we all know is going to be coming in about 4 years, even when we finish these 3. I remember that fire station study. With more growth than West Goodyear, there's going to have to be another one. So I appreciate it. I think your heart is so in the right place, and I do appreciate it. And I hope we see that money from sports and tourism, but I am not going to bank on that and say things that I don't think we're ever going to see that. And what I was going to ask you, and I think you answered my question, is that we are preparing our budget forecasts not having that money, right?
Yes, Councilman, we have not yet brought that money into our forecast because we haven't gotten enough certainty. The environment has changed recently, and with the court case being resolved, but it is not in our current forecast, and it will be the council's responsibility when we find out about that revenue, whether they treat that as a one-time source or an ongoing source. There will be a lot of factors that will need to be taken into consideration at that point in time.
And my thought was, at one point, if we ever had the money and all of our needs were met, which the way the legislature has switched out the funds for growth and everything, that we can't use certain things. We can only have a 7,000 square foot library, where other cities were allowed to have larger libraries. We have a lot of needs to be met, and I do appreciate that. But if we ever had the money, there was a whole penny on everything that this council prior to me had to raise, and I know that was a hard, tough decision that they had to make. And everything, I don't even know, I think Georgia, maybe you guys were the only ones left on that council. And that had to have been the hardest decision, but you guys did the right thing, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to pay for those fire stations. We would be in a very bad spot. I would love to be able to take that penny off, that whole penny off of everything. You know, that would be what I would like to see, but
that's not the responsible thing.
it
I
is
have to
not
say-
responsible. I agree. And as long as I see set-asides that we're having to tuck money away here and tuck money away there, and I know the costs we've talked about for the ambulance service, that's going to be a tough one. But it's the right thing to do. So I agree, and I appreciate Councilmember Osborne, and she has beat that drum, and her voice will always be in my ear, because I think she truly, truly wants to help the people, and I got to give her accolades for that, because she's made tough decisions. But I just got to say, I'm not ready for that, and I don't see the money coming in. If it rolls in, we pay for all the police officers, all the fire, all the streets are up to grade, all the roads are done, then I am 100% with you.
Well, that in a sense is giving a gift to the community, to have a quality community. And so I'm in the same vein you are. I appreciate your suggestion. And I remember another tax that you wanted, and you wanted it very badly to have taken away. We didn't. We lowered it, but didn't take it all away. So I understand your attitude toward it is sincere. But I agree. And we have so many more things to put into the city and do, which are going to, in the end, benefit the citizens. Okay, go ahead.
So now we'll go into just a high-level overview of the whole city budget. So again, you'll see we're actually reducing the entire city budget by $2 million. That's the net of the increase in the general fund we just talked about. And I mentioned when we met last week that we were going to be converting the fleet so it's no longer an internal service fund. And so we have now made that correction as we're preparing to get the budget ready for our new financial system. And in essence, we have been previously double budgeting for fleet, because we've budgeted it for an internal service fund, and then we budget for its charges in the departments. So by making that correction, we did not change the department budgets, but we eliminated the double budgeting by just taking out the fleet revenue and the fleet expenditures. So it's the same budget, it's just not doubled up in that area. So again, just a similar message you saw before, slight change in these charts due to the changes that we've already talked about. And then I wanted to go into try to get some of the information that was requested on property tax. So we have several slides here on property tax. So this provides just the comparison of the current year rates and levies and next year's rates and levies. And you'll see we're just noting a slight increase in the rate, and that's consistent with funding our debt service and maximizing the primary.
Joe? No, I'll get you, Sherry.
You know, I understand rate multiplied by the 100,000, but the reality is there's typically probably on average, a 5% increase, because that's the max that the assessed valuations can go up. So if it's the max, maybe some have gone down, but I'm not sure how many have gone down. So I just want to make sure that when we put this out, even though the rate's the same, and you're putting it against 100,000, a home, if it was 100,000, maybe 105, is it now, as a result of that 5% max. So the reality is that there's going to be some increases. It's just a matter of, it's going to be small because there's a 5% cap. It can't go up on any more than 5%, but there will be some. So,
yeah, Councilmember, and we use the 100,000 because that's what the truth in taxation statute requires. So we try to be consistent from document to document. But you're fully correct. The average home will have appreciated to some value. Our total assessed valuation on, in fact, I think we'll see a next slide. you'll see that appreciation in our total assessed valuation was 4.4%. So some properties may have gone up the whole 5%, some may have gone down, but on average there was a 4.4% in existing properties. So this presents you, there were some questions about the portion of the property tax increases coming from new construction versus appreciation. And you can see that information there with the, and then also the portion that's associated with the 2% for the primary. We don't show that 2% portion on the secondary because it's not associated with the secondary. That's specifically controlling growth in the primary. The secondary is driven fully by our debt service.
Sherry, do you have a question?
I did. I think that answered it with the new construction, because I think that's what we talked about. I think Joe brought that up last time, that we want to make sure we highlight how much is the new construction. And I think when we send this out of what we've done in the past is we've kind of given an example on different areas on like a bill, how to read your bill and how much is the city. I think that's very helpful because a lot of times when they see, you know, as a citizen, you just see your bill and your amount and you don't know how much goes to the city. And then if it's gone up with the community college district, we're looking and saying, oh, the city raised my taxes. So if we could do that again, that little example, the last couple, you've got a great example that I think breaks it down really well.
We'll do that. I'm going to write a note down here.
You
before I
have
turn
it
the
there,
page.
huh? Oh, I thought maybe you might have had the old one.
Oh, no. I didn't guess that one.
And if I could, Mayor
Sorry
and
about
Council, we do intend to do that dollars and cents publication. Again, that goes through and
That's good.
interprets the budget into an easy-to-read document.
Thank you.
Can you send us these, since we didn't have these,
Yes.
can you send us, thank you.
And then there was also a request to have information on the recent property tax rates. So you'll see back in FY14 we were at $1.90 as the combined rate, and then we are now down at $1.73.5, and that effective in this fiscal year, you had changed the policy to allow the rate to go up to $1.74, the combined rate, when we in making considerations about issuing new debt. So we remain below that level and are not anticipating issuing any new GEO bonds next year. FY20 we would have the capacity to again issue GEO bonds and stay under that $1.74.
Joe?
You know, I think it would also be helpful too is right before the Great Recession, I'm still not even sure we've gotten the total levy that we got then. It would be nice to show that comparison and then show also the increases in our assessed valuations that has come back. Because even back then, I still don't think we recaptured that 4 million or whatever it was at that point higher, you know, and then all of a sudden it dropped off. But I don't think we're there yet. So it would be nice to see that picture so we could show our constituents, even though this may go up a few cents or whatever case, it's still nowhere, well, I wouldn't say nowhere close, but it's not what the height was, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, or whatever it was. So we still have not recaptured all of that total levy yet.
You're correct. We have not recaptured the total levy or the total assessed valuation. So we'll go back to a chart that shows all the way back to that high point.
Sherry?
And when we do that, I think I lost my train of thought, because I know what you're saying, because you'd see it was like really high and then it went really down. And I know why it couldn't go up again. It's because that was when the legislature passed that requirement. Could we put an asterisk that explains that's where that kicked in so that people don't think, they're going to say their houses went up, so why isn't the city getting as much?
Yeah, we can certainly identify where there were legislative or voter-approved constitutional changes that impacted our assessed valuations and or our tax rates.
That was a ballot measure, I believe.
It was a
wasn't
ballot measure, yes.
It wasn't legislative.
That's a good one to put in focus. Explain people how that process is. Joe?
Just another note, they've been shifting the commercial assessed valuation over to the residential. So they've been shifting the cost that we would get on the commercial back over the residential. So that's another reason why, you know, it kind of skews the data a little bit as well, because it's been shifting slowly back to the residential. So again, there's a lot of those pieces when you look at what the height was versus now. We're nowhere close to that. So,
But was it on commercial too much in
Joanne,
the
would you
first
please
place?
put your hand up so I know?
well, yeah.
Okay. Appreciate it.
But it's a shift, so you can tell them what's happening out there. But you're right, it was probably too high to start with.
And the other thing I'll make a comment, I'm not so sure the entire public actually has the same questions, although I think it's good we have the answers and we have the information. But on the norm, when you talk to people, they do not dig that far into it. They know what they have to pay, they know their insurance, they know what the taxes are, and they know what the schools are doing, and that's it. So when they dig that deep, they really don't. So whatever we do, we should make it understandable, because it just, if you get too complicated on this, it just produces more questions, and so many people are not able to be able to discern what that means. I know there's businesses that have bookkeepers and they have all of that, but on the normal household, I would say there's only certain parts of that they can digest. I'm not saying not to do this, I'm just saying. Joe?
No, I like to explain it when I tell them, I say, I got good news and bad news. It says, what's the bad news? It says, first, the property tax went up a little bit. What's the good news? Your assessed valuations went up. Oh, okay.
See, yeah, that proves my point there. And so that's what we want to be very careful of. Of course, we ask her to put all this information out, and we're asking more hours of phone calls from the public and emails from the public because they don't understand, and then trying to teach them via that network is not always the best. So,
Mayor, Councilmember, we'll use caution in what we put out in the public documents,
Yeah.
but when we come back with the property tax levy, we'll provide all the information that's been requested, so it'll be available
same
in the
thing that
public.
they see when
Yeah.
it comes out. Absolutely. All right, go ahead.
All righty. Now, there was a question, and hopefully, Councilman, this will answer your question. There was a question about the outstanding principal balance on all of our debt service, and then also what our principal and interest payments are for this year and next year. So this shows you that the ballpark, there's, and this includes the almost $11 million that was issued for the Indians. So basically, just under $100,000 of principal outstanding for the ballpark-related debt. And then showing you you can see there that that increase in the payment we were talking about earlier, where we're showing on the ballpark general fund the $6.7 million going to $8.9 million. So that's that reaching that final increase in our payments that set aside was preparing us for. And so this hopefully helps address that. I don't know if there's any further questions on this item.
Wally?
So, Lori, what was the total cost of this ballpark? Was it 127 million?
I do not know the answer to that
Doug, do
question.
you know that?
I had it at one time.
Doug? Okay.
It was below the 108 that we originally.
1.8?
It was below the 108 when
Maybe
it
too
was
long,
first.
but we were given a figure at one time.
Okay. So, in reading your chart, and it says that the outstanding principal, which includes the Indians portion and the general fund portion and the property tax of 109 million.
That's the total. Yeah, that includes the part that was funded on the property tax and
That's
the
the
Indians.
total that we owe.
We're going to get
That's
some
the
help
total
here.
that we currently owe in principal.
All right.
The total ballpark project was $108 million.
108. Okay.
108.
And so we haven't paid down to 108 yet.
Correct, because as you recall, we've been doing interest-only
Yeah.
financing
Right.
until,
So-
yeah, we refunded so that we started paying
Right.
principal this year.
But we're going to start, we were taking around 7 million out of the general fund. Now, starting in the next budget year, it'll be 8 million,
Okay, we're going to go
right off
from
the top.
6.7 to 8.9 million in payments associated with that debt, with the ballpark itself.
All right, so if the Sports Authority does begin to pay back, what are they to pay back? 2/3 of it?
I
Half
don't-
of it?
I don't know what the arrangement
Or
was.
what the contract
I can't
said.
remember.
I don't remember.
32,
Oh, the ST.
was it? Something like
Doug
that?
looks like he knows.
Because I get this question a lot.
The amount that they currently would pay back to us is $43.8 million.
43.8. And not in one lump sum.
Not in one lump sum.
Probably monthly
collections
payments or
come in.
yearly
Correct.
payments or something.
Correct.
Okay.
They had originally added interest every year, but the interest payments stopped up until the point where they actually start paying us back, then interest will kick in again.
All right. So then, if that does occur and they do pay us that portion that we had been counting on, our ballpark would have been a bargain to us for only 65 million instead of 108 million. So we have to look at the silver lining. It may,
Salesperson.
it may work.
To the 43.8, that's for the Indians portion. There's another amount that's for the Reds portion, but that would only be paid back if additional funding came into the STA where they extended the tax or got a new tax put into place. But we do have an agreement for that, but that is one that is very, very, very unlikely to ever come in.
Probably slim and none.
Yes.
Slim to none. Okay, that's wonderful. So then we should not have a problem making the 8.8 million.
Correct. Correct. That's in our ongoing budget. It's in our FY19 ongoing budget, and it was
Every
in the
year.
forecast. Yep, yep.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
That's something to feel good about.
And that was part of the refunding, was to get it to be a more level payment in the
So that it
future.
would work easier for us, yes.
So let's make sure I read it right here. So how much are we paying on top of our interest that's owed? Is it 2 million there? Did I read it wrong?
So are you, which area are you
So
looking at?
we owe, what's our interest, we're paying payments on our interest. Are we paying any towards principal, I guess?
Yes, now we are, and I don't know the principal amount off that, but I can probably look it up while we're talking. We began making principal payments this year, and we'll continue to make principal payments from here on out as a result of the refunding.
We don't know exactly what that is, though,
And
exactly, right?
next year. Let me see if it's in this
I know.
schedule.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I know and this was in the forecast too, right? Look, going forward? That
Yes,
we're gonna keep looking,
the
I mean, keep looking
forecast.
at, I mean, I'd love to see us eventually knock this out, but it'll be a long time, I'm sure, so.
We feel
And I
the
don't know if,
same way. We feel the same way.
yeah, and I don't know if adding an extra million towards principal every year will make that much, I mean, make double payments. I don't know. But-
Yeah.
So just different ways to
We had
pay
to
it
make a
down.
decision, so we
Right.
decided to do
We
the
could-
other.
With that,
Yeah.
while we're still offering high quality services, but
Right.
eventually
It's-
I'd like to see some, if we had extra, go towards paying some more principal. But
And municipal debt's a little bit more complex. We can't just pay extra,
Yeah.
but we could certainly pre-fund future payments until bonds were callable and those types of things. But there's certainly ways that we could build towards the future to try to find a way to resolve that debt early.
yeah, but I'm glad that we're paying a little extra on it, not just interest only. So, thank you.
Joanne?
Well, on that note, I was going to wait till the end, but on that note of wanting to lower debt, because when reading the yellow sheet that we just had been given us last week regarding our bonding and our credit ratings, so, and this may be, Lori, I don't know if this is you or a Doug question, but you know, it had stated in here that there were 3 options that could help us increase our rating. And it said that one of them that seemed something that we might be able to bite off easier, and that is the pension issue. And I'm looking for the right, it was like 27 million, I believe. And so I'm wondering that, I don't know how close, this is a bond question, how close we are to that amount to be able to increase our rating. If it's a matter of showing a plan of funding that outstanding pension fund, then I wonder if that's the right way to go, rather than putting it towards a ballpark, but making where it's strategic, where this is going to help us raise, you know, our credit rating, which in turn, because I think it was $600,000.
Lower interest.
You know, correct. And so as we look at, you know, the future and the things that we want to build, maybe attacking that pension fund is more the answer than just actual capital. I don't know. So it's a question to you.
Yeah, there's, the one thing we got is for those three actions, including the pension, there's not a specific dollar amount, like if we paid down half, it would impact it. They're not able to give
There's not a
us
sweet
any-
spot
there's
that they're gonna
not
go,
a
"Oh,
sweet
that's
spot
it.
that they're
You've
looking
hit it."
for.
Okay.
However, one of the things the state legislature passed this year is every city has to adopt a plan on how they're going to deal with our pension liability. And that's something we just started putting together now. But some of the things that we're doing already is we pre-fund our entire amount for the year. So at the beginning of the year, we take everything that's put in the budget and send that entire amount to PSPRS right in the month of July so that we start earning interest on it and get credit for it right away. We send that amount even if we got vacant positions, so we pre-fund for vacant positions. So we're not taking any kind of a savings from a budget perspective from that PSPRS debt because it is debt, so we're doing everything we can to apply that down. And we will then in the future when we come forward with our PSPRS pension plan that we're required to do, we'll have some real frank discussions with council on what some of the different options and different things that we can do for that.
Okay, thank
For
you.
being proactive. Any other questions? All right, go ahead.
All righty. So just again, a wrap up on the positions. This is an increase of 2 in the position count from what you saw when we were here last week for those 2 narcotics officer additions. And then this just walks through what the position additions are, and it goes through by department indicating what's being added and why. And again, we're showing that 2 additional positions in the police department as a result of those narcotics positions. And then it does slightly change the position to population ratio by adding those 2 positions. So with those additions, the ratio goes up to 7.63 with the full position count, including the part-time, and 7.14 if we did not include the part-time. And with that, we're at the point of we're finished with the presentation. We'll, as I mentioned several times last time, and I'll remind you at this point this time, the budget numbers will change again when you see them at tentative because we will add the carryovers that are being processed right now. We do have an open house coming up for the public to get information similar to what has been seen here. And then we'll move into the formal adoption steps later in the year. And also the CFDs will follow a similar process to this. So happy to answer any other questions.
Any other questions? Joe?
Just a general comment on the capital improvement plan. When will we have the timelines beginning, ending? Will that be, where will that fit in here?
We will, we're meeting tomorrow to talk about the next steps in the plan after we pushed back. It would be my goal that the projects that are at least in the 19 year in the CIP, when we bring forward the CIP itself, if in terms of presenting a document, they will be in that document.
That's what I'm kind of looking for, 19. I'm not asking for anything past that year. What I'm looking for is the upcoming budget year, start dates, even if they started before this fiscal year, and projected end dates. The middle stuff's all for you guys. I don't care about that. I just want what the projected end dates are so we've got accountability to see if we're hitting what we say we're going to hit. That's all.
Thank you.
Joanne?
Just one last random question. The signage for this facility, it wasn't the wayfinding signs, it was the building sign, correct?
Correct.
Jerry?
Oh, I just have a quick question.
Just quickly, we do have our fully funded replacement plans. They're funded under this, right? 'Cause-
Yeah, the asset management plans are funded. We have 10-year plans, and we put resources into those funds at the 10-year average required to meet that plan's forecast. So those are included in the transfers in. We only budget to spend out of those funds what's in next year's plan. So, but we are fully funding those according to the council policy.
So thank you, and I want to thank the city manager, thank you, and thank all the staff for working really hard on this. It's a very good conservative budget that meets all of our needs, so thank you.
Thank you.
Wally?
My question was to follow up with Joe when he was just asking about the CIP. Are you talking about the 1 year that's going to go forward and we'll have that next meeting?
We will attempt, we're meeting tomorrow to again figure out how to approach the CIP process. So, but my goal will be that we will have it by the time we prepare a CIP document, which may not be for the next meeting, but when we publish the CIP, it will have the timelines in it. So each project that we publish will show the start date and the project end date in that document.
And if necessary, we'll have the opportunity to discuss that, whether we think that's what goes forward or not.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
You have a question, Joe? Any other questions? Yes, Brandon?
Yeah, I said thank you for putting this together. It's very informative. I think we hit all our objectives, so I know it's been a lot of hard work doing it, so I appreciate it. Yeah, and I'm interested in the timeline as well, so for the projects. I don't know if there's some milestones you can throw in there along the way, but like as opposed to just knowing the end, that we missed the end, maybe to see it coming along the way, which I'm sure internally you guys you're tracking that, so.
yeah. Last year in our in this year's CIP for the large projects, we presented a little table that showed this is the time frame under which we think we'll be designing. This is the time frame
Yeah.
under which we think we'll be constructing.
Yeah.
So we will be preparing something similar to that, but we will have specific end dates for the projects that are being funded next
Yeah,
year.
just so we can check and adjust if something's way off, we see it coming down the pipe, so. All right, thank you.
The other question, I think the process was to make it understandable, and the other thing is, so the projects, we actually will see some of them to the end, right? Instead of, we're going to do this, and 10 years later, we see the project rising off the ground. And I think the new process is just going to be outstanding, but it does take more work for staff. I can see that in figuring out which ones, and then coming in with the numbers or pretty close to what it could cost, because sometimes and I know you're working really hard on that, but anyway, I think it's great and really greatly appreciated. Anything else before? I think we're going to adjourn this one, and we're going to go on to our special meeting. But before I do, anything from the city manager? Anything you want to add at all?
Just a note that we will have a shred-a-thon this coming Saturday
Oh,
at the Police
good.
Department for Goodyear residents, and then we have the Small Business Summit that will be taking place through the Chamber of Commerce, Southwest Valley, on Wednesday.
Great. And I don't know, I didn't ask if council wants to say anything about I didn't think so. I think this is more serious business. So I'm going to adjourn this meeting, and then I'm going to call the special meeting to order, all right? This meeting is adjourned. And I would like to call to order the special meeting, April 16, 2018. And I need a motion and a second to excuse Councilmember Stipp.